Calling the meeting of the Public Infrastructure and Utilities Committee meeting to order. It is Wednesday, December 13th, 2023. It is 3:38 p.m. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Vollmer.
Here.
Alderwoman Keys. Alderman Browning. Present. Alderman Aldridge. Chair Schweitzer.
Present.
Alderwoman Keys. Alderman Aldridge. We have 3 present. You have a quorum.
Wonderful. A quorum being present, we will move to approval of the minutes. I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes of December 6th, 2023.
I move that we approve the minutes from December 6, 2003.
2023.
23, thank you.
It's like that was a long time ago.
It was.
A 20-year minute approval. Wonderful. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Madam Clerk, please
take
call the
that.
roll.
Alderman Vollmer.
Aye.
Alderwoman Keys. Alderman Browning.
Aye.
Alderman Aldridge. Chair Schweitzer.
Aye.
Alderwoman Keys. Alderman Aldridge. We have 3 aye votes.
Thank you. With your vote, you've sustained the approval of the minutes of December 6, 2023. Moving on to our board bills for review. We have 2 on the agenda today, both with the same sponsor. We will start with item number 1, Board Bill number 122. Alderwoman Boyd, you are recognized on Board Bill number 122. I think that is a Channel 4 mic. You gotta use the other one, unfortunately. Don't use that one.
I talked about it. Thank you for having me for hearing Board Bill 122. And let me take a deep breath. Every time I come before you all, I'm huffing and puffing on. Okay, it is to vacate a street, Selba Court, from Goodfellow Avenue West to its termise, and the petitioner is Hillville LLC. They are doing a total renovation of that whole complex. Their plans are to make it a safe and secure environment because they have been having a lot of issues going on in that complex with drug activity, gangs, and car thefts. So the thought is behind it is to block that off. They're going to have a guard gate, and then they're going to have it where people have to show ID to come in and out to make sure the residents that actually live there are safe, because these are people with families that are in this complex. So I'm excited about it because all the overgrowth, they have literally taken down all the overgrowth to make it more visible for people to be able to see and make it a safe, clean environment into their facility.
Thank you. Any speakers or on this?
No.
Okay.
No. I spoke to the contract manager, and I spoke to the owner. So we've been working ever since I got back in office. We've been working together on that complex.
Okay, thank you. I will move to members of the committee for questions. Alderman Vollmer.
No questions. Anything for public safety, I'm all for. She knows her neighborhoods.
Thank you. Alderman Aldridge.
No questions.
Vice Chair Browning.
No questions. I can see the challenge of the site and think this is probably the appropriate action, so thank you for taking it.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. So does the site surround the area to be vacated? I'm looking at the map and it looks like.
It's that court. It's like a little street.
Right.
And actually, that was the cut through where they would cut in to do a lot of the crime and stuff. So they would have that all shut down.
So
Because my concern at first was, you blocking them in, you locking them, and Like, no, they'll have key cards so they can get in and out and have easy access. He said, but we had to think of twofold. We had to make it safe for the residents, and then we had to keep the unwanted out because that was causing a problem in that community. And so now they're even building a community center in there for those residents so they can have some kind of safety.
Okay, thank you very much. That's interesting. You know, I have dealt with different street vacation issues, and oftentimes that I had been told that street vacations really only happened when there was a need for development. So you're saying the main reason here was a safety concern, but they all are planning on developing some of the.
They just purchased this. That's like a repurchase. Not a repurchase, but it's a new owner had purchased it, and so they are going to redo the whole complex. All apartments will be renovated, and they're upgrading everything. So that's why I'm so excited about it, because that's a main thoroughfare, and I'm working with the businesses around there, and they're excited because it's starting to be a breath of fresh air that's coming through that area.
Great. Well, thank you. Anything further you'd like to say before we take a vote?
No, I've just asked for your unanimous support in regards to this to help make sure that those residents are safe in their community.
Thank you. And we have no public comment on this. Anyone signed up?
We have no written comment,
Or public? Okay.
no public input.
Wonderful. With that, I will entertain a motion for a due pass recommendation of Board Bill number 122.
So moved.
Second.
Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Alderman Vollmer,
Aye.
Alderwoman Keys, Alderman Browning,
Aye.
Alderman Aldridge. Chair Schweitzer,
Aye.
Alderwoman Keys. We have 4 aye votes.
With your vote, we've sustained the motion and passed Board Bill number 122 out of committee pass recommendation. Thank you. You're recognized again, Alderman Boyd, on Board Bill number 173.
Okay, thank you so much, Madam Chair. I'm excited about this bill. We have finally got past go on this bill. I want to thank President's Office and Christina for working with me diligently, and the other Alder people that I have spoken to that have been here prior, that we got their input so we can make sure we were fair in this process to deal with the money that was left from the previous wards. And so what this was money that was left from the original 28 wards, and then we wind up having 14 wards. So we had to ensure that those older people that had projects were not lost. They could not lose those dollars, so they could ensure that they can continue to make sure those projects were done for the residents within our community. So this ward capital bill is what it does is make sure that those dollars are put back into those areas, and the new older people will be overseen to make sure those projects are continued. And we spoke with older people, BPS, and streets also to make sure that everybody was clear on where we were.
Thank you. Before we move to questions from the committee, do we have any speakers?
We have one for the public to speak, Mr. Charles Bryson.
Okay, and you don't have anyone from BPS or the Comptroller's Office or any?
No.
Okay, but they've given their support of this?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. Well, we'll do public comment and then move to questions from the committee. Mr. Bryson, if you'd like to come up. Thank you, Alderman.
Mr. Bryson, if you could state your name and the organization you with, and do you have 3 minutes to?
Yes, he does need to be sworn in.
Oh, I'm sorry, I did not. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you so much.
Charles Bryson, TrailNet.
Please use the mic. Yeah. This one.
This
Yeah.
one? Okay.
This will not cut into your time.
Is this new technology?
It is new technology. Yep. We have
I've been here too
handheld now.
long. Are you ready? Okay. Good afternoon, Chairwoman Schweitzer and members of the Public Infrastructure and Utilities Committee. My name is Charles Bryson, Policy Catalyst for TrailNet. We are a regional nonprofit dedicated to safe streets for all users. Trona is glad the board bill has been placed in consideration regarding the disbursement of previously appropriated ward capital. This bill does two things. First, it cleans up the allocation of ward capital funds caused by the reduction in the board. Due to the timing of the last automatic election, the previous board was unable to encumber all of the ward capital funds to specific ward projects before they left office. Now these funds will be encumbered and monies will go out for the work to be done. The second thing this bill does is, and is also most important, it shows the glaring weaknesses in the ward capital distribution method. I am not sure that it makes sense that our streets department, Parks, Recreation, Forestry, Building Division, who are in dire need of funds, while the Board of Aldermen had 17 million that sat idle. TrailNet strongly recommends this bill and all future ward capital distributions place a 2 fiscal year limit for the funds to be assigned to a project. All funds not encumbered after 2 years should perhaps be placed into the Streets Department line item for their general usage based on need. And as the definition of need should be or could be, TrailNet recommends the definition be what is required because it is essential to maintain quality and safety of life. Some quantifiable needs based on that conversation would be non-decorative street illumination or lighting to support safe neighborhoods, repair sidewalks including ADA accessibility, reduce street and alley green overgrowth, reduce vacant and dilapidated buildings, and the square miles of a ward. All of these can be computed and therefore submitted to either the Streets Department, BPS, and certainly the Board of Aldermen for consideration. Neighborhood improvement specialists and other city staff could assist in surveying each ward to determine how much of these are needed in the ward. In the end, TrailNet believes there should be much more accountability to the process and distribution of ward capital. It should be based on need, designed to lift all neighborhoods using a quantifiable, need-based approach and accessible to all residents of the city to understand the process. TrailNet thanks you for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Bryson. I appreciate that. All right, seeing no further public comment.
No further comments.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. We will move back to questions from the committee. Alderman Boyd, if you can come back to the dais here. Alderman Vollmer, you're up first. Questions?
No questions. It's a shame that a lot of this money did sit for so long in many areas. I always try to use up all I could every time they would give me some. So, and there are many things that Mr. Bryson spoke of that in the future and as we move along this process to be put in place. But the purpose of this bill right now is to put the money into the new ward capital. And I believe that it's been done fairly by geographic region. And we will hopefully take this and then move forward and put some better practice into how we apply this money to our cities. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderman Aldridge.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a comment. I want to thank the Alderwoman for bringing this forward. I know this has kind of been lingering on a little bit here at the board. I think this is good that we're handling this. It'll be done equally. I know these funds are necessary to do a lot of projects that are needed in our community, especially in other parts of the ward. I'll ask the clerk to add me as a co-sponsor. Also appreciate Gramindia from the President's office. She sent us all out kind of a breakdown of where the funds from each ward and to our new wards are going into. I think this is important to get past this step. I think moving forward, I'm a champion of doing things equitable, but I don't think this is a place right now where that conversation is needed. These are just encumbered funds. But I appreciate the Alderwoman for bringing this bill forward, and I support it.
Thank you. Vice Chair Browning.
I would echo the comments of my colleagues that I am grateful for this bill today. I think that we are doing it in most fair way that we can do it at this time. And I look forward to the discussions in the future about better ways to do this. I think our streets, where we spend most of our ward capital money, could really benefit from a citywide approach. We certainly should be looking at traffic patterns. What are the most used roads? Where are the most problems? You know, we know that we have higher crash corridors in some of the more disinvested areas of our city. And so it isn't right that we put these into little pots and then hope that the alderperson spends on that. I think we ought to be taking a better approach, and our citizens deserve that. So I look forward to that conversation in the future. But today, this is a great bill. I really appreciate the time that has been put into it, and I will be voting in the.
Thank you. Alderwoman Boyd, I know we've spoken at length about this, and I really appreciate all of the time you've taken to work with every alderperson to make sure that everyone was comfortable with how it was moving forward so that Ward Capital and the projects that people have been working on for years could keep moving forward. I know so much of the money that is coming back, if you will, to the first ward is already allocated to projects that are very big and very important projects. I think, you know, yes, there's a lot of money that is being reallocated to these different ward accounts, but so much of it is sitting there because projects are very expensive and take a very long time. And the way we fund these major projects is a little bit silly a lot of times. You know, I have several $100,000 in the bank waiting for a $1.2 million project of paving South Broadway and traffic calming along South Broadway. And, you know, these crucial funds need to stay within that project. So I think there's a lot more efficient ways that we could be using Ward Capital, and I think I'm forward to those conversations going forward. But for now, we need to make sure that the projects that should be happening are still happening, and the time you're taking to work with all of us to, you know, make sure that people are on board. You don't see a bunch of aldermen here complaining about this bill. So I think it's clear that you've put in the background work to make this to work for everybody. So I really appreciate that. Anything you'd like to say in closing?
Yes, Madam Chair. I just wanted to echo what Alderman Vollmer has said. This, as you three were saying, this is the first piece. We were just trying to clean that up. But we were clear that Christina and the president's office was clear. We have work to do in regards to Ward Capital. And so we know we have other things that we have to work on to make the Ward Capital looked at differently, because you're correct, it is where money was just sitting. And so what people don't understand is a lot of times the money was sitting because the projects weren't moving, or either the alderperson had to build their money up to match to have a project to move forward. So the processes were holding a lot of people up. And so it would have been unfair to just say, well, you know, okay, sorry, you just have to start all over. And so it's not fair. And I'm not looking at the older people that's going to suffer. I'm looking at the resident. That's who would have suffered because if we had just let it go. So what Mr. Bryson said, I don't disagree, but this bill wasn't been a part of it. That will be the next step that we would look at. And we have started having conversations to say that we need to look at how Ward Capital is and how we need to do it differently than what it was before. So we appreciate his comments and what TrailNet is saying, but this bill, like you said, is not what we're addressing. That's further down the line. And so we know we're not through doing the work. We just have to start somewhere, and this was the first piece. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So unless there's I don't see any other aldermen here. So we have no further public comment. So with that, I will entertain a motion for a due pass recommendation of Board Bill 173.
I
So
will
moved.
No.
Hearing no objection to previous rule, we have passed Board Bill number 173 with a due pass recommendation. Thank you, Alderman Boyd. Okay, we have no resolutions for review, so we move to committee discussions. I am very, very excited about this committee discussion that we are having today. We are setting up the presentation now, and so as soon as we have that ready, we'll forward with it. But I will give a little bit of an introduction and overview. We're lucky to have Mayor Brad Kavanaugh here of Dubuque, Iowa, who will present and discussion about the work that they have done on the Bee Branch River, that is an urban tributary renaturing project that connects to the Mississippi River. And this is a partnership presentation with Mississippi River Cities and Towns Initiative, with a mind and an eye towards what St. Louis could be doing better and differently, especially considering River de Pere, which is a similar river that we have that goes into the Mississippi. So without any further ado, I will invite Colin Wellenkamp of Mississippi River Cities and Towns Initiative up to the mic here to introduce the presentation. And you do need to hold this mic up if you don't mind. And as you are ready, I don't think we need to swear him in because he's not giving testimony on. Okay, so wonderful. You were recognized. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Yep, did. Oh, there we go. It's an honor to be here. Thank you for this opportunity. I would ask unanimous consent to revise and extend our remarks if appropriate and possible. My name is Colin Wellenkamp. I'm the Executive Director of the Mississippi River Cities and Towns Initiative. We are an association of 105 United States mayors along the entire 10-state length of the Mississippi River corridor from Bemidji, Minnesota to New Orleans, Louisiana. We're headquartered here in St. Louis. Our offices are just 2 doors down in a city-owned building. So St. Louis is home, and I'm born and raised here, so near and dear to me. We have one of our rock star mayors that will be giving a presentation of a rock star project that has been occurring along the Mississippi River for the better part of 2 decades and has almost completed. And we believe that it is a moniker of a project that can be shared to the benefit of a lot of our cities up and down the Mississippi River. This is part of a larger discussion that MRCTI is hosting on the renaturing of urban tributaries of the Mississippi River. St. Louis is no stranger to a lot of the techniques and deployments that Mayor Cavanaugh will be talking about, and has made great strides already through Great Rivers Greenway, through the watershed restoration projects of the Merrimack River, and a project between Kimmswick, Missouri and Arnold, Missouri to restore floodplain at the confluence of the Mississippi. So St. Louis has enjoyed the benefits of some of the techniques and natural infrastructure that Mayor Cavanaugh is going to discuss. They've just done it at a much larger scale and very comprehensively, incorporating a lot of different types of infrastructure improvements, not just natural. And I would say that is the turn of value, that our cities along the Mississippi River, when they were founded, a lot of their original infrastructure followed waterways, big waterways and little ones. They followed streams, they followed creeks. So when we improve these rivers, especially urban ones, we have the opportunity to improve surface transportation infrastructure, utilities, pumps, pipes, conduits, and pedestrian walkways, bike paths, all bridges, all these other pieces of infrastructure that have been built along these waterways. It's not just to their benefit, it's all these other platforms of infrastructure. And Mayor Cavanaugh is going to demonstrate that first. So thank you for this opportunity. I do have a handout for committee members at your discretion, Madam Chair, on just some of the work that MRCTI is doing and major projects so that the committee members have an opportunity to know what MRCTI is and what we do. Without further ado, I'll bring up Mayor Cavanaugh from Dubuque, Iowa. Mayor Cavanaugh.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you, Colin. Appreciate that. It's an honor to be here today. Chairwoman Schweitzer, Alderman Aldridge, Alderman Browning, Alderman Fulmer, I believe it was, correct? And anyone else who's joining us, thank you very much for having me. I want to make sure I check on time before I begin this. Is there a specific time you'd like me to finish up? I have a lot of pictures to show you, but I can fly through what I need to.
Take your time. We do try to be respectful of staff to end, before 5, but
Okay.
it's only 4, so take your time.
Oh, great. So I have 58 minutes with you today. This is going to be wonderful. Thank you very much. Well, in all seriousness, I want to begin by introducing myself. I've served as the mayor. I'm Brad Kavanaugh. I've served as the mayor in Dubuque for 2 years. I was on the Dubuque City Council for 2 years before that. I am a native Dubuquer, so I'm serving the community that I know and love. I've lived in most of my life, except for the 7 years that I lived in St. Louis, of all places. So I graduated from St. Louis University, Master's in Social Work in 2003, stayed here from 2001 to 2008. So I have some familiarity with the situation with the River des Peres, other places, and the connection to the Mississippi River. There are more connections than you know between Dubuque and St. Louis, and a lot of connections up and down the river. One of the things that I think we all share are some of the challenges that the river can bring. So I want to talk about that today in a specific project that we have. Before I get started, I want to make sure that I publicly thank a couple of key staff members here. Terry Goodman is our Director of Strategic Partnerships at the City of Dubuque. She was a major part of a lot of the funding pieces you're going to see here that we talk about. Darren Meering was the project manager on this. He's our project engineer, fantastic engineer, great staff member, and want to make sure I thank him. And then Kristen Hill and Randy Gale from our Public Information Office helped put this presentation together that I'm going to share with you. And I think that they are the true rock stars in all of this, so I appreciate that. You need to know a little bit about Dubuque before we start here, because I think when you think of Iowa, you have a certain idea in your mind, and you think corn, and you're correct, but along where we are is not a flat piece of land. We actually have large bluffs right along the Mississippi River, extremely wide points of the river, lots of flooding issues historically, and it's a part of Iowa that is actually, it's incredibly beautiful and different than you'd think. It's the oldest city in Iowa, and that comes with really old infrastructure. So what I want to talk about today is a project that was born of challenges that we had with flooding and infrastructure that was over 100 years old, some decisions that were made in a century ago that really affected people's lives today. And I want to talk about why we did it, what we did, and then most importantly, I think for a lot of the folks in this room, how do we pay for it? What are the resources that we needed to be able to do this? So I'm going to start here with a video. Make sure that this plays.
43, visibility out west is almost 0. Just go ahead and put me in relative azimuth. I'm ready out here and have 107 disregard. Yeah, we're still moving pretty good down here, like a river. 107, the lights on White, northbound. At 12th, the light are down. 170, cars floating down 22nd and Kaufman. I don't know if you can put a message out over the radio stations, but there's still cars coming down Kaufman. The water's so high, they can't steer or stop or anything. We just came through the same thing you're getting right now. It's rocking and rolling out here.
So this is a picture that is, I think, becoming a little bit more familiar. Oops, sorry. Move on, my apologies. A little bit more familiar for a lot of us who live along the river when the streets themselves become river. And what we're seeing more often in the last 20 years, give or take, is a lot more weather events that cause storms like this. So in May of 1999, there were citizens of Dubuque who were in their basements because there was a tornado warning. They had to make the choice between staying in their basement and avoiding a tornado or being flooded in their basement and being down there when the water was rising as high as they were. You can see some of these pictures here. So water filled the streets, filled their neighborhoods, filled their homes, poured into basements. They had nowhere really to go. And as one resident put it, it was evacuate the tornado shelter or drown. Our freezer was just bobbing in the water. So you can see some pictures there and some of the damage that storms like this caused. And another resident said, as the water came up, we could hear everything banging around and glass breaking. So according to the newspaper, hundreds of basements were flooded in this one particular storm. So after this, as we often see, citizens and residents of Dubuque stood up and said, we need to find a solution to figure out how to stop this. And I want to make sure that I stress this point. It really was the residents of Dubuque who drove this process in saying, we need to find a solution because we have far too many homes that are flooding in this way and far too many storms happening in this way. And when I say far too many, I mean 6 presidential disaster declarations from 1999 to 2011. And this is just some of the details of those and the number of inches. You can see here 15.7 inches of rain in 2 months. That was a record in 2008. And it just kept on going. So beginning in 1999, the community started a discussion. And that discussion started with a watershed. So the city of Dubuque actually, just a quick note on the city, it says 58,000 residents here. We're around 60,000 people, give or take. There's about 100,000 people in our surrounding area. We have 2 watersheds. There's a Catfish Creek watershed and another one called the Bee Branch watershed. These are 2 different creeks that run along and drain into the Mississippi River. So the Bee Branch is roughly 6.5 square miles of land located in the northeast part of the city. It's only 25% of the city's surface area, but over 50% of Dubuque's residents actually live or work within this watershed at any given time. And it's characterized by steep slopes and bluffs that shed the water from the west to the east. So it really pushes the water, the land itself pushes the water out towards the Mississippi River and into some of the lower lying areas. So right here you can see a picture. This is 12:05 p.m. on one of the days during one of the storms here. And at 12:22, you can see that the water has moved along. So this is kind of characterizing some of the flooding that we actually had in these areas. It gives you an idea of the flash flooding that we would experience. You can see the manhole covers popped right off there and the water's coming flying through there. So the estimated damage for the 6 disaster declarations was about $70 million with residents in the city and everybody that was involved. This area encompasses historic neighborhoods offering some of the community's most affordable workforce housing that we have. And many of the residents are low to moderate income and those least able to really recover from damage like this. The flooding had a major impact on public infrastructure and city services, both within and outside of the area. And then you'll see here, the assessed value of commercial property rose in most of the city, but then actually decreased by 6% in this flood-prone area. So not only were people being affected when the storm was happening, they were not gaining the wealth that other people were gaining in the other parts of town. So in 1999, after this storm, the city spent $275,000 to conduct an engineering study that we called the Drainage Basin Master Plan. And I do want to mention too, as I give this presentation, I forgot to mention in the beginning, I did say I've only been the mayor for 2 years. This process started long before my time in office. We are still going through the process. It's a multi-phase project you'll find out. But I will say that I've actually presented on this project more than anything else since I became that people have been very interested in. So back in 2001, we had this Drainage Basin Master Plan, outlined infrastructure improvements that could help mitigate the flash flooding that was being experienced with it. And as you see on the right side of the screen there, 1,150 homes and businesses were prone to flooding in this area. This is the area where we were really. So although some of the improvements were already completed or underway, this master plan was updated again in 2013. And this really led to the official development of the Bee Branch Watershed Flood Mitigation Project, which is the project that we're talking about today. Multifaceted, long-term, multi-phase approach to dealing with this problem. So what this project, this mitigation project is designed to do is 3 main things: slow the rate and the timing of storm water that is coming through, reducing the volume of the water, and then increasing conveyance through the flood-prone area. Basically getting the water out to the Mississippi River where it's safe. We have a very protective flood wall in the city of Dubuque, and it's able to protect us from the river itself, but it's behind that flood wall that it was causing these problems. So this started, the first real phase of this project then started with some detention basins. This is the engineering portion of talk about a little bit. I am not an engineer. I'm sure you're aware we listen to engineers very frequently, so they've shared all this information with me quite a bit. But this is really the engineering portion of this. So the first is our Carter Road Detention Basin. It's in the northwest portion of the watershed, And in 2003, this was an earthen dam that was approximately 350 feet long, 40 feet high. It was constructed to hold back the stormwater so it could slowly release it over time. So it basically can hold 59.3 million gallons of stormwater runoff, and it's designed to reduce the peak flow of runoff during a 100-year event by 98%. So it's really built to be able to last through some major flooding. And it's at a point where it's not really connected. You can't really see it being connected to the rest of the B Branch project, but this is definitely part of some of the water that flows underground into the B Branch Creek itself. So in 2009, the storage capacity of another detention basin called the West 32nd Street Detention Basin, this one was doubled from 15 million gallons to 32 million gallons of water. And this has a combination, you can see here, of wildflowers, prairie grass, wetland vegetation, more of a natural approach to trying to build this detention basin and hold this water in place. I should mention too, this actually involved the acquisition of 16 different properties and street and utility construction, and allowed the city to gain access to the stormwater system. This is a key point too. We didn't have to condemn any properties to be able to do this project. That's how much the community wanted this. This was something that people were working with the community on. Another piece next to the detention basin project was something we call our Green Alley program. So if you think about, we have a lot of alleyways. I said the oldest city in Iowa. There's a lot of places that are running behind buildings, especially in our downtown area. The before pictures are what most alleys generally look like. They're built asphalt, they've got compacted rock. They're basically take the water and it drains off and into the storm sewer and causes more of the problem. One of the things that we came up with from an engineering standpoint was green permeable alleys that were able to drain some of this water into the ground so it's not all flowing into storm sewers at the same time. The goal here is to actually create enough of these alleys to get to 240. So 240 alleys want to be converted to the Green Alley project. From 2014 to 17, we've done 80 of them so far. There are more scheduled from 2024 to 2040. In the next year, we're doing 3. This is one of the challenges of this project. We were able to get quite a bit of funding to do this up front, but then some of the pieces of this project are expensive and difficult to do every single year, so we're chipping away at it little by little, and the green alleys are a part of that. So the other piece of this is daylighting a creek. So the creek you see here, and I'm going to talk much more about this particular part of the project, but the creek that you see here actually was buried underground for about 100 years. So this is more of the natural version of what this creek is really supposed to look like, but it was buried just in a storm sewer that simply couldn't handle all the water that was coming through. So we've daylighted that creek at this point. So I want to talk a little bit more about each aspect of this. And just real briefly, this is basically our philosophy as we look at this. We're looking for that sweet spot in the middle of that Venn diagram. See the environmental impacts, social and cultural impacts, and the economic impacts of the plan coming together. And this project really was able to accomplish that. We have the environmental impact, we have the ability to affect people's lives from a social and cultural standpoint, but then also have real economic impacts that we can measure as we do. So we'll talk more about that as we go. So going back again in time, 2003, the City Council formed a 16-member B Branch Citizen Advisory Committee. And this advisory committee, made up of residents in Dubuque, actually was the driver in figuring out, what do we want this to look like? What is our vision for this particular project? How can we make this something that is not just another storm sewer? This is something that's actually going to be something that provides us with more benefit as a community and gives us more pride in some way. So the committee considered 2 potential solutions, either an open waterway or an underground sewer, just making what was there already better. So that was an option that was put on the table. To help evaluate the solutions, they came up with 6 criteria. They're listed. So thinking about local businesses and services, minimizing property acquisitions in some way. It has to be affordable. We have to be able to pay for it. It was already becoming the biggest project that we were looking at in our history. Wanted to preserve neighborhood access and connectivity, obvious health and safety risks and minimizing those, and minimizing the impacts on the quality of life and environment. So those were some of the main things that we looked at. So in the early stages, this was a picture that this committee came up with. This is kind of what they were thinking in their head of what we would want this to look like. Obviously, went with the daylighting of the creek. This wasn't just something that we were going to bury underground again, but they, right away in the beginning, said, we want more than just some sort of channel that's cutting through that's holding water. We want something that we can look at that we're going to actually enjoy, and it's going to be more of a benefit. So I'm just going to run through a couple other slides here that have some more visual preferencing of what people were thinking of. So when they think of the landscape, these were some of the ideas. Not just concrete, prairie grass, something that wildlife can enjoy, something people can enjoy, trails that run along there. Access to the water. This was an interesting point that people had. You know, it's interesting living along the Mississippi. Dubuque sort of forgot that it lived along the Mississippi for a long time, and in the early 2000s, rediscovered it. We have something that we now call the Port of Dubuque. Going back to my history, all the cool stuff along the river happened when I was living here in St. Louis. So when I'd go back to Dubuque and visit my family there, I would just be shocked by all the things that were happening and this rediscovery that people had of the river right there. It is absolutely beautiful now along the river. And as that happened, people started to see things like this and think, well, the water's there. Let's have access to it. Let's enjoy it. It's something that we should be able to have as a part of our life. And I'll talk about part of kids' lives too. And then when we think about the bridges and the way we want things to look, we don't just want this to be basic and utilitarian. Again, something that we can enjoy in our neighborhood, a neighborhood that had gone through quite a bit over many, many years. And then something really interesting started to enter the discussion. What if this was more than just an engineering project for stormwater? What if this was more than just trails and prairie grass and places where we're going to probably see more birds and fish? What if we could play there? What if we have a bike path? What if we have overlooks and places where we can, rent out to people and be able to have places where people can enjoy along this, and it feels more like a river that we can enjoy than just a storm sewer? So this is the big picture that then came into the concept. So you'll see on the left side of this picture here, we call this the upper B branch. This is where the park concept came into play. And down where you see more of the open waterway, that's the lower B branch. And that's where the water really starts to move into one of the detention basins and out into the river. So further off that picture to the right is where our flood wall is, and it goes off into the river. And then this is sort of the beginning of 2011. This is when the lower B branch was completed. So in the middle there, I want to point to that roadway, that sort of thick roadway that looks like a road. It's actually a railroad. Big piece of the puzzle we're going to talk about later in this presentation. But this actually, the upper B branch goes underneath that railroad and then goes out into that open water. The big empty field you see right there used to be our packing plant. That was one of the major employers for Dubuque for forever. Almost everybody I know, their parents worked at the pack at some point. And it ended in the early 2000s, was sold and finally deconstructed, and now just an empty lot there. But the water flows through that, past that, and then into the larger basin there up to the left, upper left corner, and then obviously up near the top there, that is the Mississippi River. So the water gets pumped out over the flood wall into the river. So that is our lower B branch there. So this is before and after. You can see it was just an empty lot there and then turned into something much more pleasing to the eye. Another before and after there. You see some of those concepts of the bridge that I was mentioning before. And then one more here. And that's an example of an overlook, something that's much more constructed and ready for people to enjoy. So then we moved on to the upper B branch, and this was actually completed in 2017. And what you'll see here is what really did become much more than just a drainage basin and a sewer that would run stormwater from out of this neighborhood. It really became one of the best parks that the city of Dubuque has to offer. And it's a linear park, so it runs all the way along that creek. So what used to look like this, just a plain lot that was there, not much there. There's an elementary school picture that's kind of right off there, turned into what you see there on the right. And here's another example. This is when it was actually the ribbon cutting, when this first began in 2017. I am in that picture. I won't spend time pointing that out. I'm pretty buried in the group. And then this is another example of overlook. So what I want to show you next is another engineering portion of what happens to this. One of the most fascinating things about this project is actually that that water that you see there, this is obviously not a rain event. During a major rain event, the whole project is built so the water can go up the slopes. So you see those slopes that are right there, and the sidewalk and the bike, that's actually a bike path that runs right along it. You can see in this video here how this works. So just watch the timestamp, and then you can kind of see where the water goes. We're starting to get into daylight here. It's actually a bit of a destination when the rain happens, because you can go down and see this happening. We do close off the sidewalks to make sure that people are not in a dangerous situation. And there is some cleanup that happens afterward, but actually much less than you would think, because it is built to do this. So over this time period, we start to see the rain come back, go back down, and the water flowing out. So, and that's not even as high as it gets. It gets all the way up to those bridges that you see, but that's basically how this functions in this way. And that's the same video. So, did it work? Did this actually help us? Here's some great examples. Summer of 2017, we got 4.9 inches of rain in less than 24. This same thing happened in 2002. 4.9 inches of rain in a 24-hour period. In 2002, it led to a presidential disaster declaration. Then the damage caused, it can be estimated, based on those numbers, that the damage that would have happened during this storm would have cost about $11.6 million in property damage. That's $11.6 million that didn't happen. We did not have that kind of damage. Another example here for you is 2019. From September to November, Dubuque received 22.35 inches of rain, 13 inches above normal, and the fourth wettest on record. And same type of situation. Could have had lots and lots of damage, and had a very similar situation earlier, and we had no damage based on these storms that had occurred. And you can see here, this is where the water comes from some of those drainage basins and opens up into that daylighted creek. And you can see the water filling up right there. So I have a few other pieces to talk about here, and then I want to make sure I give some opportunity for questions too, and anything you might have. So we talked about the basins and being able to work with that, something that the city of Dubuque was able to accomplish working with our engineers and anybody that, any firms that we hired. We talked about the upper B branch portion, which was the part that also involved the park. I would say one of the most complicated parts is a part that we haven't even discussed yet. That was working with the railroads. So if you've ever worked with the railroads, there are specific challenges that come to working with the railroads. However, I will say that the railroads, when you stay at the table with them, can eventually come to a point where you see the benefit of a project and they're able to work with it. This was incredibly complicated because that yellow box you see right there on the left is going in from the upper into the lower. All the stuff on the right is the upper, and we needed to get the water under the railroad, under multiple tracks of the railroad. And we needed to do it without stopping the railroad from working at any point in time. So it took about a little over 10 years of discussion to be able to get this done, and a lot of engineering work, a lot of partnerships with both the railroad, Federal Railroad Administration, Department of Transportation, everybody we needed to be able to talk about it to accomplish this. So what was actually done was I need to go back real quick here. So it was again 100 years old, and there was a bottleneck there, and we needed to get the water underneath there, but then figure out how to make sure that the water didn't get back up into the upper B branch. So started construction in 2019, and the construction looked like this. I wish I could tell you the sound too, because there was these drills that we had was actually, it involved micro drilling underneath the railroad, 8-foot diameter pipes under those tracks, and each pipe is approximately 200 feet long. So the project was carried out in a way that it allowed the railroad to remain in operation throughout the tunneling, and it also included adding these upstream and downstream underground transition structures, a pumping station, and a gate system that I said prevents the water from going back up the creek. So this is the finished product right here, October of 2021. You can see that there's that gate there, and it raises and lowers to be able to, if the water gets too high on one side, it keeps it from going back up. And then it actually pulls the water through there when it's flowing down during those major rain events. And it really improved the ability for the water to get from point A to point B. If you look on the far right of that picture, you see 2 box culverts over, not the ones that are under the bridge, but on the little boxes there. Those are actually the hike bike trails. So that was the one final piece of this to be able to connect this. And I think this was probably the most exciting part for the community. This was the point where, you know, we're not fully done with this yet. There's some pumps that we need to fund and be able to get some things moving, some of the engineering pieces. But this part was when everybody got the most excited, because we finally had this connection that we had been missing for a long time. So I'm going to give you the significance of this connection. A person can now ride their bike from the Mississippi River almost all the way to the Field of Dreams, 26 miles away. So you're all familiar with the Field of Dreams, I'm sure. Really looking forward to the Cardinals, by the way, playing at the Field of Dreams in years very, very soon. That will happen, by the way. So, but we have a trail. It's called Heritage Trail. It runs along an old railroad. It goes all the way from Dubuque to Dyersville, where the field is. And from the Mississippi all the way out to Dyersville, you are fully connected now because of this final connection that was there. And the significance of that wasn't lost on anybody. It was actually something that was a really important piece of this that people got really excited about. All right, so I probably could have talked about all that and you wouldn't really care so much, because this is the part you really want to talk about. How do you pay for something like this? How do you actually do this project? And honestly, this is where things get really fascinating, because we were able to pull this off. The team that put this together for the city of Dubuque did an absolutely incredible job. And we have a saying in Dubuque that we kind of live by, and we say everything happens through people, planning, and partnerships. And that was absolutely the case here. The relationships that were formed to get the funding to be able to do this with multiple agencies across multiple layers of government are relationships that will last for decades now, and were formed over decades to be able to put this all together. So I want to talk about some of the pieces of this. This was a $250 million project. It was the largest project that the city of Dubuque has ever done for a city our size. We had to use funding that was both, that was local, came from the state, came from the federal government. So I want to talk about some of the state aspects of this first, and I'm going to try not to get too technical as I discuss this, because I think you can go into more detail as you look through some of these materials. But one of the things we use in the state of Iowa is what we call our state revolving loan funds. And these funds, also known as SRF, they provide low-interest loans and financial assistance for the planning, design, and construction of water quality improvement projects. We use this for almost every single part of the project, the detention basins, upper and lower, and then the railroad culverts as well. The nice thing about these is they provide really predictable low interest rates for stormwater projects, and it has to have a water quality benefit, which this absolutely did. So these provided major financial assistance for us, and we were able to partner with the state of Iowa to be able to do this. Along with that, something else that was related but tangential was we actually did a project to upgrade our water and resource recovery center. So where all the stormwater inflow might end up if things are not working the way they should. So we wanted to make sure that we had a strong water and resource recovery center, and they were able to combine that with this project. Another thing through the SRF program and the Iowa Environmental Commission authorized the city to reallocate $9.4 million that was paid in interest on the loan associated with the wastewater treatment facility that I just mentioned, and use some of that money for our Green Alley projects. So we're able to be pretty creative in working with the state of Iowa to be able to use some of these funds in various different ways. So another Another award that we received was $98.5 million from the Iowa Flood Mitigation Board, and this came in the form of state sales tax increment financing spread over 20 years. So this is the largest amount that was ever awarded to the city of Dubuque, and it's enabled the city to issue debt for stormwater improvements much sooner than it was previously anticipated. So, some of these tools are tools that I know vary by state, but this one is an interesting one in Iowa, tax increment financing in this way. So there's a couple slides on this I want to be able to show you. So each year, the total amount of state sales tax charged on goods and services purchased in Dubuque is expected to increase. So this increase is called the sales tax increment. So that's the yellow right there. And then up to 70% of the sales tax increment is distributed to the city of Dubuque to help fund the B Branch project. So this means that a percentage of Dubuque's retail sales tax is being invested back into our community to make local infrastructure improvements and enhance the quality of life within the watershed. So this table gives you an example of what the annual payments in sales tax increment funding will be through 2033. So you can see how that number goes up and then back down over time, but a lot of money to be able to help us with this project. Another really important point that I want to make sure I stress is how we talk about the parts of the project and how that matters for the funding that you're trying to attract for the project. So one thing that was a part of this was what we called an amphitheater that was there, and it's right by an elementary school. Audubon Elementary is right there. And at first, everybody's thinking amphitheater along the creek, that's going to be the greatest use for this, right? It's connected to this all-season trail. It's going to be really, really great opportunity to have something like that. But we started to realize that the amphitheater actually is much more than an amphitheater. It's actually an outdoor classroom right there along this waterway. And not just for that elementary school, but for any school, and then for any group. We have the National Mississippi River Museum and Aquarium, and they often have programming that comes to the B Branch to be able to look at things. In fact, there was a program studying mussels that were found within the B Branch waterway after we did this project, also looking at ducks, birds, waterfowl, all kinds of things that you see along there. So when that realization hit, it helped us to be able to think about this funding in different ways and recognize multiple benefits of this project and look at different funding streams that you could use to be able to do this. So when you present it as an outdoor classroom, which it is, it starts to hit in a different way, and you start to have access to other funding streams that you didn't have access to before. So some of these I want to talk about specifically. This is a long list of all the different phases and costs, and I want to go through piece by piece just a few of some of the federal programs that we were able to access as we thought about this more creatively. So and they're kind of in different buckets. One bucket is disaster resilience. $129 million you'll see there. And you can see some of the various different groups that we were able to get from there, not just the state flood mitigation tax increment, US EDA funds, a jobs grant from the iJobs bill, disaster relief grant there from the EDA. In the environmental bucket, we had about $15 million. These are mostly EPA funds that you can see there. Lots of brownfield cleanup, lots of clean water SRF sponsorship, different ways that we were able to access those. And then transportation, we received a Tiger grant for one of the end portions of this that helped us to be able to fund a lot of work that was done in an area that is just adjacent to the B Branch. And then also a National Scenic Byways grant, and part of our Dubuque Metropolitan Area Transportation Study, DMATS we call it, comes through transportation funding. And then recreation and tourism. So you see here we've got a state RECAT grant, Iowa Department of Natural Resources, State Recreational Trail Grant. We looked at this in so many different ways that we were able to look at lots of different funding sources to be able to do all of the pieces of this puzzle that we wanted to put together. So that's really I think one of the big things we walked away with, and something that has affected the way that we look at projects in Dubuque, I think forever. I don't think we'll ever look at projects the same in this way because we have this opportunity to look at funding in this way. So when you look at all these, the total grant funding came to $163 million to use, and the portion of that for Dubuque is $86 million. The city of Dubuque is funded. So altogether, $250 million project, like I said. So this is basically to conclude, and then I'll open up for any questions and discussion on this, but we resurrected a Mississippi River tributary and ended up making it one of the greatest parks that the city of Dubuque has now. We've got some great parks, but this one is one of the most popular. It's a destination for residents. It's a destination for tourists that come to Dubuque, and we have quite a tourism industry. It's a destination that all of us use. There's 7 of us on the city council, and we're all regular visitors to this particular place. I'm an avid biker myself and love to add this to any ride that I take and love to connect it as often as I can to get under those railroad culverts that took so much work. This is a picture of some second graders from one of our elementary schools walking along one of their class trips. And sometimes one of the greatest things is, the water most of the time is shallow enough that it's entirely safe for anybody to play in. We see kids just playing in it all the time. They're down there just hopping from rock to rock and looking through things and finding toads and doing things that kids do. And it's one of those places that you can't do that in a storm sewer that's buried underground. That's just not possible. And it's also a natural habitat for wildlife. You're right along the Mississippi. You see heron, you see a lot of ducks. We see butterflies coming back, especially when you add prairie grass and other natural habitat to it that attracts wildlife. Great fishing along this area. See lots of fishing happening. And it's also something for us that's important. I failed to mention that where Iowa sits is actually where the connection where Illinois, Wisconsin, and Iowa come together. One bridge going to Wisconsin, another one going to Illinois. This is really our gateway to Wisconsin. That highway you see in the background is the highway that leads to the Wisconsin Bridge. So we have this front door to our state that really is much more attractive than it ever was before. So something that we can really use as a draw for people who want to come visit. I mentioned the outdoor classroom. It serves as a classroom. The whole place serves as an outdoor classroom in many ways. And hundreds of miles of trail, like I mentioned, all the way to the Field of Dreams, along with lots of smiling faces every time you go down. I believe that's the Duck Derby over there for one of our local nonprofits on the upper right, as you see. Pumpkins weren't naturally growing right there. That wasn't something that happened. That's another event. But you get to see quite a few different things. And those, the bottom left there, kids just playing in the water. So with that, I want to say thank you for this opportunity to talk with you. And I really love talking about this project. Obviously, proud of the city of Dubuque and proud of the work that we've done. But more excited of the possibility that this provides for cities like St. Louis and all the cities up and down the Mississippi. So glad to be here today and be happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you, Mayor Kavanaugh. That was an incredible presentation. I learned so much, and I am so jealous. So I will open it up, Vice Chair Browning, if you would like to kick it off with questions.
Thank you, and thank you, Mayor Kavanaugh, for that incredible presentation. You must be incredibly proud of that, and I can tell that this must be one of the better parts of your job, getting to go around and just brag about your awesome riverway. As you know, and you're familiar with St. Louis, we have the River des Peres, and it's more of a sewage line right now, and it smells bad and it looks bad, and what I see after watching this is an opportunity. And I think it's inspiring to look at something that used to be a huge problem for your city and now is something that's a huge benefit. I actually want to visit now. I'd love to go ride my bike from there to the Field of Dreams. I guess my question for you is, when you understood you had the need to do this, when did the scale of this project really come into vision? Like, did you start assembling parts of it, or did it kind of get proposed as a big project all at once and then you just kind of worked on each piece individually?
Yeah, my understanding of that is that it was more piecemeal than something that was thought of right off the bat. Obviously, it was a reaction to a problem, which a lot of our solutions tend to be. I think we can wish that government was more proactive, but sometimes we need some of these things to happen before we realize the scale of the problem that we have. And that's what happened. We needed a way to move the water that was much better than what we had. So that's where it began. But when it really started to take shape was when residents got more directly involved in the discussion. I will give just infinite credit to the City of Dubuque staff and elected leaders at the time in the early 2000s who recognized right away that if we're going to solve something for a big part of our city and the people who live there, we better have the people who live there at the table right away so they can talk about it. What do they want out of this project? What do the leaders that they elect and appoint and push towards these boards that are going to be discussing this project? What do they want to see? And that's really what happened. So the project took shape based on community feedback, and it was the driving force in really making this a possibility. And, you know, again, to everyone's credit, rather than saying, nah, that seems too difficult, that seems too tough, I don't think we should turn this into a park, let's just focus on the water. Nobody really said that along the way, or at least when they did, it didn't last very long, because what really ended up happening was people just kept saying yes. People kept saying, why not? You know, let's try it, let's see what we can do. And then they chased the funding for the why not, and were able to secure it to be able to make it happen. So it really was just everybody working together in a way that is, you know, it's entirely possible. I love the way you put it. You see opportunity. That is the way we need to look at these projects. We need to be able to see opportunity in these projects and think about what it really could be and ask those why not questions. And you're welcome to Dubuque anytime. Love to have you. We can go on that bike ride together.
I'm serious. I'm going to put it on my list. And so is the project complete now? There's no more phases planned?
No. Most of it is. Most of it is complete. The phases that are left really involve some heavy lifts. So one of the big ones that we're working on, this is one of our top priorities this year as a city council, is a gates and pumps project at the very tail end of this. There's some really old gates and pumps that separate this project from the Mississippi River on the flood wall. They're from the 1950s. They're breaking down. We have to fix them. They're really expensive. We put it out for bid once. The bids came back way too high. It was immediately after the pandemic, way too high. We had to take the project off the table, and now it's back on, and we're trying to figure it out. The green alleys are the other big lift. And these are the things that we get requests for people to have green alleys behind their homes and businesses in that area of town more than anything else. They're frustrated when we can't say yes to that over and over again. They're expensive. They're about 33% more. I asked that specific question from our engineers, about 33% more than building just a regular asphalt alley, but they're worth it, and we want to continue to do it. So those are the big pieces of the project. Most of the rest of it is pretty complete at this.
I had a question about the maintenance of those permeable alleys. So they're about 33% more.
Yeah.
But do you find the maintenance to be cheaper on the tail end?
Yeah, so far, yes, in general. Now, we're about, let's see, like 5 or 6 years out from when we really started to put them in. And that is a big question for us, because we have quite a bit more snow in Dubuque. Our weather's a little bit different than St. Louis. So quite a bit more snow, a lot of ice, challenges with stuff like that. They take a lot of a beating because that's a lot of where the refuse goes out. So we have major garbage trucks and things rolling down there. But so far, they're holding up pretty well. And the water does what it's supposed to. It runs right through and seeps into the ground where it needs to go. So we still believe in it enough that we're continuing on with it. I feel like it's a pretty good use of our funds right now. And the maintenance on it is, I would say, at this point, comparable to what we have for other places.
Thank you. And I'm guessing that the maintenance along the waterway, you've mentioned it's saved millions in property damage from storms, so it probably balances out. But do you find that there's maintenance costs for these beautiful areas that you have next to the waterway as well?
Yeah, even the pictures we're looking at here, after those rain events, when the water goes up in the way we saw it, there's mud and stuff that gets on there. You put a brush on a John Deere lawnmower and run it along there, and you're able to blow that right off there, and it doesn't actually affect too much. There's not a ton of work that's needed to be done on anything like the retaining walls you see there or any of the other vegetation and those kinds of things. We need to put a lot of mulch down on a regular basis, and what we've actually done with that is we've partnered with community organizations. We have a group called Dubuque Trees Forever that has been essential in planting trees in this area and then also maintaining those trees and caring for them. We've really partnered with them so that takes some of the costs off of the city of Dubuque taxpayers that might have to foot that bill otherwise. And the bridges and everything are holding up very nicely. We aren't having any challenges with those. The other mechanical pieces are still functioning well, except for the stuff that's old, needs to be replaced, like I mentioned.
And I'll wrap up with, what was that saying you had in Dubuque?
Yeah, people, planning, and partnerships.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. This is just such a wonderful solution to the problem that you had. It's really great that you started on this back in the early 2000s before it became an even worse problem with climate change, creating more violent storms, heavier rainfall. We have seen issues like this in St. Louis, and I hope that anyone who watches this presentation finds inspiration from it, because since you used to call St. Louis home, I'm sure you still wish the best for our city. We are working on making our city a city that can last into the future. We are so ideally situated on the Mississippi River. It is a blessing for the city. It's why we were founded here in the first place. So the way to work with the water in your city and make it a key part of your city and make it add to the beauty is just something really special. And so thank you for coming here and presenting it today.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Chair Browning. I think you might be stealing him to Dubuque, which hopefully that doesn't happen.
A stronger partnership. That's
Yeah,
all.
stronger partnership. Exactly right. I really found the presentation interesting and really inspiring. Like I said, one of the things that I feel like is so important when you think about sustainability and is that it's not a separate thing that cities do. It needs to be something that is part of maintaining a city. When you think about infrastructure, it's not, yeah, we have to repave our roads, but it's building roads that can last into the future, that work for our future, and that, make sense to, and the same with something like this. When you think about stormwater management, you all really stacked on a lot of different things that could exist all within the same project, and that is so interesting and inspiring to me. One of the things that is tough, I think, when you look at a project like this, you think of it being a 20-plus year project, changing administrations, changing involvement of politicians, probably changing ideologies in the time that has happened. So keeping folks engaged and moving in the same direction for a project of this size and scale. You mentioned resident involvement. Have there been people who, they're looking back 20 years in their life and they're the ones who made this happen, or has it been, recommitting to the project? Or can you give a little bit more of how that worked historically?
Sure. Yeah. You make a really good point. I mean, elected officials change, administrations change, the political winds shift, and that affects local government in all kinds of ways. But the residents of that city last. They stay in that city for a long time. So the people of St. Louis will be the people of St. Louis in 20 and 30 and 40 years. Getting that buy-in from the community at the very beginning of a project is the key to anything that's going to last this long. And I think that's the reason that this has been done. Now, I don't want to pretend like there aren't detractors from this project. I get people every once in a while that basically will look at a picture like this and say, there's no reason we needed a bridge that looks like that. You could have just built something that was more plain than that. We didn't need a big drainage ditch in that neighborhood. And what I normally find is that the people who say those things aren't living in that neighborhood, for one, and probably aren't spending much time in this particular place. The large majority of people I talk to find this as a point of pride for the city of Dubuque. And if you can create that sentiment from the start by getting people involved in that and making it yours, this is not what St. Louis is going to have if St. Louis goes forward with a project like this. St. Louis is going to have what St. Louis wants. And I think that's what's really important, because that buy-in is going to outlast any administration and any political wind shifting. And that's, I think, really what needs to be the North Star for any project that you do like this.
Thanks for that. We have an interesting situation with our River des Peres, in which it runs through multiple different municipalities who would all need to be bought into a project of this magnitude. The same with, we have MSD, which is our Metropolitan Sewer District that operates outside of city government. So you talked a little bit about the partnerships, but it does seem like this was City of Dubuque led. Do you think that is a fair statement, or do you feel like there was outside pressure to make this happen?
This particular project is squarely within the city boundaries. I mean, it is in the heart of a downtown area within the city of Dubuque. And that means it's a similar layout to a city like St. Louis or anything along the river where the city goes outward to the west. So we didn't have pressure necessarily or even really major regional partnership in getting some of this done. But what you point out, though, is another, goes along with the whole people planning and partnerships idea again. because those partnerships that you have regionally are absolutely going to be incredibly important in any equation here. And we think like that in Dubuque. We're kind of out on an island in a little. We're not surrounded by any other major city in Iowa and Illinois or Wisconsin. So we're kind of on our own to do things like this oftentimes. But there are some projects that are very regional. I'll go back to the Field of Dreams. It's a regional project. The city of Dubuque committed money for that project in the city of Dyersville. We're working together on something like that. When you have projects that are going to benefit multiple places in big ways, there are ways to come together at the table, but you do have to come together at the table to do that. So it's entirely possible, but it does involve some relationship building that can take some time. And what I would hope is that, when you look at the time frame on a project like this, you don't get frustrated, but you see what the kind of work it's going to take to build the types of relationships that you need, gain the resources to get it done, and move it forward.
Thank you. I'm reminded of a saying that goes something, when was the best time to plant a tree 20 years ago? When's the best time today? And that really feels really pertinent for a project like this when we think about St. Louis and the disasters we've seen as a city in recent years. We've had numerous 100-year flooding events. There was a period, I believe it was in 2019, Colin, correct me if I'm wrong, where we had 200-year floods in a week. And, I have some neighborhoods in my ward where I represent that were just getting hammered. And, they want a solution, but the solutions are 20 years from now, but they're 21 years from now if we don't start this year. They're 22 years from now if we don't start next year. So, I really think it's incumbent upon us to think about cities in that time frame. And we get so hung up on the daily grind of city government and what we're doing today, and it's easy to get in our own way, really. So I again am just so inspired by this project, and I'm so hopeful that that the people who are listening here today, who may have some influence, and I think we're moving to Dubuque if this doesn't happen in St. Louis. So I'm just kidding. Just kidding. Whoever's listening. I really hope that we can think about what we can do, because St. Louis has so much going for it already, as clearly Dubuque has had so much going for it. But this is an even more incredible project that has meant so much to your city and will make your city just more appealing for generations to come. And I think that the River des Peres has been obviously a huge asset to our city when we think about flooding and drainage, and it's very utilitarian looking, and this idea has been on the table and floated around for so long. And I couldn't wish all day that things like this had been started sooner. But we're here now and we have a responsibility. So I really appreciate the time you took to come and to share this vision with us and to give us so much inspiration on our Wednesday. And I don't think we have any further questions, and we're getting right before 5. So again, thank you.
Did take that 50.
You did fantastic. You've done this before. Thank you so much.
It's an honor to be here. Thank you.
I really appreciate it. Thank you. And with that, we'll keep moving on with our agenda. Any acknowledgement of any written testimony?
We have none.
Okay. Announcements. One of the things I want to kind of keep on folks' radar is that every committee at the Board of Aldermen worked on resolutions regarding the goals and agenda of their committee. In our committee here, the Public Infrastructure and Utilities Committee, we will be having a check-in on that resolution when we come back from our winter break. So that will be during the first meeting. When we come back, we'll be going over that resolution, and I hope to be talking about some of these initiatives that were brought up. Any announcements, Alderman? Okay. Excuse members, I do need to excuse Alderwoman Keyes today for necessary absence. And motion to adjourn? I will second, I suppose, since we don't have any other committee members here, and we'll have a previous roll, and we will adjourn. Thank you very much.